We're going to talk a little bit today about using AI tools to create accessible materials, as we're all sort of headed into that final last push. And we all know what a vast amount of work is going into creating these accessible materials. And so we wanted to give you some ways that you can use AI to carry a little bit of that and do some of that work for you. We're going to be mostly looking at ChatGPT today, just because that's the thing that we all have access to. The idea is to give you some tasks that are relatively easy to do. Think about how we can reduce our labor and make some of this a little bit easier moving forward. We're going to do this in two parts. And the first part is meant to be sort of some easier lifts, a little more basic stuff. And then we'll get into some of this slightly more complex stuff in the second part.
Before we dive in, everybody has kind of varying experience with our accessibility principles. And so we wanted to just kind of touch on a few things that will help us move forward, kind of with a similar language. So first of all, one of the best ways to kind of think about accessibility is to remember the acronym POUR, P-O-U-R, perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. These POUR principles are really great because they can kind of drive your understanding of whatever you're engaging with, whether it's instructional materials in a document format or your Canvas course shell. This AI generated image does a great job of illustrating those principles for us. But the one that I really want to point out to everybody as we move forward with this workshop is the R for robust. Robust means is that material is able to be used across multiple contexts. And so, like I said, today, one of your big takeaways will be one of the most robust formats that we can generate is HTML. The next thing I wanted to point out was good PDF versus a bad PDF. Here I actually have two examples, and this comes from this document that we have been sharing around creating accessible flyers. Congratulations to Dr. Andy Gardner for this wonderful accessible flyer. And you know it's accessible because when you run your cursor over it, it catches the text. Good PDF. Whenever we can scroll and catch the text with our cursor, we know it's a good PDF. So this is an example of what I call a bad PDF. And this is not from anyone on our campus. This was sent to me as part of my service work with the Down Syndrome Association. You can see here, even though it says PDF, when I get my cursor over it, there's nothing to grab. And so that is your indication when you're looking at a digital document. If you can't grab at that text, that means that text is not actually text. It comes to a good PDF versus a bad PDF. If you've got something where you can grab onto that text, you know a screen reader can grab onto that information and read it to someone. If it looks like this, however, there are things we need to do to make that accessible. The next thing would be the document properties. We can talk about document properties within PDF. We can also talk about document properties within Word or even within PowerPoint. This is a PDF document that I have generated. When you're in your PDF document or your Word document, you're going to go up to File, and on that drop-down menu, you're looking for either document properties or properties. When you click on that, whether you're in Word or within Adobe in a PDF like this, you want to look for, in Word, I think it's called the summary. Here, it's the first thing, it's this description. This has nothing to do with AI. This is just the easiest thing that humans can fix on a PDF. So we're showing you this because if you do this in your Word documents or your PDFs, a lot of your flags of this is inaccessible will go away. So you just go in here and you click on title and you actually give the document a title in the metadata that a screen reader will read prior to getting into the document and reading it to the person who's trying to access that document. Just remember you've got your file name, which is separate from perhaps like on a document. Right here, this is my title in the document, but we have to be cognizant to make accessible materials, whether you're in PowerPoint, Word, or PDF, to save the document in the properties so that it maintains that. And you can see right up here, when I change the name, so if I were to go like this real quick and say something to send out, and I'll point your eyes up here, watch right there. Once I say okay, it changes it there. You are actually going to be able to use a immersive reader. We basically have a screen reader option in Canvas. To be able to turn that on, you want to go to your account and then you click on settings. Okay, once you're in settings, let me make this a little bit bigger. You're going to scroll all the way down, 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 all the way down. Here under feature options, we're looking for the Microsoft Immersive Reader. So our institution actually has this enabled. You just have to come in and turn it on if you want it. So we just click over here on that red circle. And now we click enabled, I
Yeah,
believe.
so we wanted to show you that because we're going to be using that immersive reader to test what we're doing. And so we wanted to encourage you all as well that you can turn that feature on. And so if you are using any of these strategies yourselves, that you can test that on your own in Canvas. As we were preparing this workshop and we were struggling to do some things and to get the robot to do the things that we wanted it to do, we had, I will say, kind of a mind-blowing discovery. When we are getting AI to create accessible materials, it does a much more reliable job of things and arguably a much better job of things if we are asking it to provide the output in HTML instead of asking it to create documents. And we're going to show you what this process looks like. And we're also going to show you a comparison, what we get when we try to do this as documents versus when we do this as HTML. I want to start by just talking about document remediation. And we can do this with Word files. We can do it with PDFs. We can do it with sort of standard text-based PDFs, and we can do it, as I'm going to show you, also with book scans. What you will do is you'll upload your document into ChatGPT. We've actually provided some sample prompts for you that you can use. You want your prompt to be very specific. You need your document to meet WCAG 2.1 AA standards, which is what we're aiming for with all of our work right now. Another thing to take into consideration is when you're converting that original document, do you need the AI to recreate that original document exactly? Or do you just need it to pull out things like text? If we're thinking, for example, let me use the scanned book page. Do I need it to create essentially an image that looks just like that page? Or do I need it to pull out the text and probably the page numbers and any titles? What is the essential information that it needs to preserve? What is actually not that important? And that's worth thinking about, especially because, as we'll see, images are particularly difficult for it. It can do images, but that is much more intensive task. It creates much larger files. And as I learned very well in trying to put together this workshop, those very large files can be super problematic. If you're converting materials, use images if they are necessary and they're contributing something to the meaning. But if they're simply decorative, then you can probably cut them out. Here I am in my ChatGPT, and I'm not going to do this in real time, in part because some of these tasks actually take a little bit of thinking for it. So it depends what you're doing. But what I've done here is I have started with my original sample syllabus. This is the document that I started with. So I went back to my very, very early teaching days and pulled up an old syllabus. And this is what the original document looks like. There's a long list at the end. This is something that it seems to kind of struggle with. Is the schedule at the end. So this is the same prompt as what you have in that document. So it's asking to revise the attached document following the guidelines, preserving all original content. Your goals are to improve document structure and readability while keeping the instructor's wording and organization intact. It gives some pretty specific suggestions here, changing document titles to headings, all of the formatting stuff. It's saying it wants the result as a downloadable Word document with accessible formatting applied. Here and in the prompt, you'll find a place for optional customization. So all of our documents are a little bit different. In my case, I wanted those bold labels set to strong. There were a couple very specific things, how it treats dates and weekly schedules, maintain tone and original wording. And here you can see this is what it gives us. I'm going to download this, and now you're not going to be able to see it. So this is what it gives me on the first try. Right off the hop, you can see that that image is missing. But again, it doesn't like images. I did specifically ask it for all original content, and that's not there. But in terms of the content, this is all here. That looks pretty good. These descriptions are not at all what was in the original document. So those were full paragraphs. They are no longer full paragraphs. None of my policies are full paragraphs any longer. It's kind of struggling with this. And there is actually no schedule at all. It gives a rundown. Okay, so I improved your structure, turned the readings into a bulleted list, standardized spacing. This version preserves all major content, improves accessibility, but due to the complexity of the full weekly schedule, I haven't yet structured that. So it then asks if you want to do that. And I'm like, well, yeah, I wanted the whole thing in the first place. Why didn't you just do that? So we're going to try again. So it's the kind of thing where if I want to do the back and forth, I could go and try and get it to fix those things. But at some point, you're spinning your wheels, right? And it's not really worth it. So I want to show you what this looks like to do it instead with the HTML. So here, I gave it the original syllabus. Actually, in this case, I didn't even use a proper prompt. I'm not going to lie. This was the actual prompt that I gave it. I said, recreate the syllabus using HTML that I can paste into Canvas as a page. So what it does, there's two different ways that it'll do this. It will either create an HTML file, and that is this will say accessible syllabus.html. When you click on that file, it opens in a web browser. That's all there is to it. You just get the file, you open it in a web browser, but it can also work this is its own canvas, not to be confused with our canvas. But here it's actually giving me the HTML. If you click on this little preview button over here, it will show you exactly what this looks like. Here's what it's created. So we have the course description. Notice it still doesn't have the image, but here's all the information, the course description, readings. It's formatted these as a table, which we may or may not want as a table. It's policies. Here, look, my policies are actually there in their full form. They are not abbreviated. I have the whole thing. I also have the entire schedule, which it would not create previously. Now it has actually done the entire syllabus as I asked it to do. What we can do in the Canvas, you can just copy that. So you can download and it will give you the code file. So it'll give you that .html file that you can open. You can also just hit the copy button. So let's copy this code. We come over to Canvas. I want to create a page. And when we're editing that page, we have the option to work in rich text or to work in HTML, for those of you who haven't done this. This little symbol right down here is how you flip over to HTML. I paste that in there. See right next to the 1830 words, where you see the two little closed brackets? Yep, that's how you turn it over to code. And as soon as you paste that code in and you hit save, now I have that whole thing in there, and it's just coded it all as HTML. I can copy and paste text into there as well, but that requires it to give me text. And what it is doing far better is that HTML. I would double check that everything's right in here because sometimes it's not going to get things right. Cassie, would you suggest I change those tables?
As long as you address it in your accessibility checker in Canvas, you could keep it that way. If you're adding in links, make sure you make them descriptive. Don't just plop in right down there under academic integrity. We would want to adjust that. All of you that have been coming to trainings, that's not a descriptive link, so we'll want to fix that. Ashley, if you can click on the edit and let's just show them at the bottom of that rich text editor where that canvas, a lot of us have been remediating and using You Do It, and that's excellent. When you're editing a very specific, in this case, like a page, that little accessibility checker down there can support you to make those tables accessible. The heading, we're just going to ignore that, but tables should include a caption. So right here, she's going to type in course info. And there you go. So you can just click through these things. Decided it was best not to select a header, but just to add that title header.
Alternatively, if I wanted to just not have a table, I could go in and I could say, give me this as a list, not as a table. Here I have sample slide deck.html. Okay, so that's what it would look like. You would just get an HTML file. And when you download that on your computer, this is exactly what it looks like. It's just the file name .html. It saves on your hard drive, and then you can attach this in Canvas as a file. When you click this file, here we're going to see it pop up. That will open it up as a web page. What you're not getting is the actual code itself. I'm not sure what you would get if you just save your Word document as an HTML file, but it's worth giving it a try, see what it does.
Our whole purpose here was to use the AI to do these things. If you're someone that already has that background knowledge on how to generate HTML out of Word and PowerPoint, then you can certainly do that. Our goal is to help specifically with what Ashley's about to show you here. I showed you how to turn on the immersive reader, and she's going to use that immersive reader in Canvas to read the HTML that she just pasted in.
We recommend turning this on because you can test your own materials this way. And so anything that you put in, and let me run this here. So this is the immersive screen reader.
Syllabus test. The United States in the 19th century. From Revolution to Empire. Course info.
That's a good way to test the materials. So that was a Word document. I can show you as well. This is a thing that impressed me. This was a scan of a book that I've used in classes a couple times. These are the kinds of files, obviously, that take a lot of work to remediate. I will say as well, I had a very long scan of this book. I only give it a 3-page sample because really large files, especially when you're working with images, are quite difficult and it challenges them. When I went in and tried this the first time, I did this trying to get an accessible Word document. Please add the heading, page numbers, image descriptions, paragraph formatting, clear section breaks, maintain the original wording. This prompt came out of a few different tries because I had done this many times, and it started out by giving me summaries. So the first time I did it, it just summarized things. And then I had to work with it over and over and came up with a slightly more detailed prompt. What it gave me was still not really sufficient. This is the first version. I came up and I said, well, I want a word for word transcription. Even though I asked for word, it's still giving me summaries. It's not showing page breaks. It doesn't matter the exact formatting, but I still want heading levels. It's tried again. It's giving me another document. There's more back and forth. It wants to describe the page instead of creating the page. My students need to be able to read this with a screen reader. Again, there's missing partially constructed lines, and it's a lot of back and forth. The AI does this crazy thing where it's like, but do you want me to do this thing? And it's like, yeah, but that's what I asked you to do the first time that I asked you to do that. And so it gets a little frustrating. It still didn't end up exactly what I wanted. And let me see if I can find the publication grade documents. What I got was this. And so this is really good for 2 paragraphs, and then it's missing the half paragraph that runs off of the bottom of the page. Instead of the actual page numbers, it gives me page 1, page 2, not the book. Oh, here's the page numbers underneath. Again, this is missing the bottom of the page. So you can see that it's quite condensed from what that original file was. This was my second time with this document. The first time I did it, I actually got it to a point where it was very accurate and I was quite happy with it, but it did take a bit of back and forth. And the second time I did it was not as successful. So this time, here's the prompts. Again, extract all the text accurately, use semantic formatting, page number preservation. And on the first try, I got this instead. Now the page breaks are a little bit off the mark because it actually breaks in the middle of that paragraph. So that's a little off. That would need to be fixed. It has all of the text. It is beautifully formatted. The Spanish is correct, by the way, which I was really happy about. In previous versions, the Spanish was not correct. So I have this as an HTML file. I also have it as code that I've uploaded to Canvas. So here I copied it in as a page. Our takeaway is that the HTML requires a lot less fighting with it.
Does anyone want to do it themselves on your side? Like you've got ChatGPT open and you want us to test it out? So you can start with either a PDF or a Word document. The point is we're trying to extract whatever's in that document and turn it into a more accessible version. Find your ChatGPT. Okay, so first let's go ahead and get a prompt. Over here. How about this? This is a screen grab from the online world of a professor I'm researching in Ensenada. So we can run our cursor and you can see it's actually grabbing the text. So that's at least tells us that, it's text-based. It's not image-based. And all that means is that we're not going to have to say OCR scan it. It's already text. So that's really good news. I'm going to use this one right here. So first, let me add my file, paste it in. I opened what I had generated, and here's what it looks like. Clearly suffering because we can't share our entire screen, but here was the original. So it was a seminar this guy was doing. Here you can see that ChatGPT did something very similar as it gave us an image description. So it works, it works. Could check this for accessibility, but we're not going to dig like that down into the weeds. The point is though, I mean, a very simple way to check for accessibility on this, if you've done any Word doc stuff, as you click through here, you can see that it's got those accessible headings. This is also one of my favorite things right there is it'll show you the accessibility like features over here of the styles that it has. You don't have to do this, but that's an easy way to check for the accessibility on that Word document. What we want to do is we want to drive that over into HTML, into a clean, accessible HTML document. It's got all the goodies there. So we will trust it and let's give it a go. Download the accessible HTML document. Yes, we can do that, but like Ashley and I told you earlier, like Ashley's very good with the HTML as a document. I'm a code kind of gal. Turn it into code that I can copy and paste.
Can you open up that file that it showed you? So here's something I would like to say about the using the HTML is when you copy and paste the code into Canvas, it depends on the code how well that will work because there are some things built into Canvas that don't read all of those file details well. And so again, images are where you tend to run into problems.
Now that everybody saw what I generated as a beautiful HTML page, all right, so here I go. I'm going to make my new page, Baja Research. All right, so here's my copy. I'm going to come down again. Remember, folks, right there at the bottom. And I'm just going to paste it in. And then I'll say save. Nice. Uh-oh. Is this what you meant, Ashley, when you said it didn't work too great?
I said it doesn't like images.
Yeah.
Screenshot the image, you put that in, you put the alt text on it, then you have the image, you have the text, and you have everything with it.
And then now I just have to add alt text, which we already generated it.
Converting slide decks. I have found a way to make this work. It is not going to create your slides exactly. It does have the capacity to do that, but it is very difficult. It creates a lot of buzzing and probably drains a lake, and we don't want to do that. It also creates files that are massive and really difficult for the system, the computer to handle, all of it. Just screen readers don't like them. There are some limitations on this, but I have found a way to get it to essentially recreate my slides in an accessible way for students. You cannot just give it a slide deck. Okay. So what we're going to start with is exporting your slides as a PDF. And then we're going to give the PDF to ChatGPT. It's down towards the end, slide decks into HTML. You're asking it to act as a web expert in accessible design and compliance. Use the prompt provided, and it's going to give you a downloadable HTML file. Don't ask for the code. It takes a lot more work and it is far more likely to break. Okay, so we're trying to do this with minimal breakage. Instead, you're going to get an HTML file that can be opened in the browser. Is still not enough to make it accessible. I'm going to walk you through this. I'm going to show you what it looks like. So when we put together the agenda, we had labeled this section Advanced Moves. This is a bit of an advanced move, and there is an extra step involved in this. And that extra step is creating a free Netlify account. Netlify is simply a website that will host things like this for free. I'm going to walk you through this process. Some of you may not want to do this. It might be too much, but I think it can be quite helpful. You export your slides as a PDF. You load it into ChatGPT. You give it the prompt. Download what it gives you, open it in your browser, see if it's working for you. Are there things you want to change? Because you might not like the output. You might need to rework the output a little bit. When you are happy with it, then this is where you need to post it over here. This is my slide deck. This slide deck is very image heavy. That's something to think about. Right? When you're asking it to do this, you're not going to get it exact. 44 image heavy slides is too much. When I've created my lectures, this is going back to COVID, I started doing them in sections. So rather than have a whole 45-minute lecture, I have 3 15-minute parts or something to that effect. My lectures are already broken into parts. If yours aren't, you might want to think about logical places to break them up. And so instead of asking it to do the entire slide deck, I've asked it to do it in pieces. And I've given it the first 20 slides here. Here's what it has given me. Again, it's not recreating slides. In the cases where the slide is only text, it is just pulling out the text. Here, though, it is actually recreating those images, and it's providing image descriptions at the bottom as well. It's done a pretty good job at actually recreating And that it did with a single prompt. The challenge is, this looks good. Is it accessible? We showed you how to install the immersive reader, but here I'm going to use a web extension. Read Aloud extension is going to read this the way that a screen reader would read. It essentially functions, it's a built-in screen reader. If I go over to Netlify and I add a new project, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it this link. There's my link. And now when I click this, it opens it as a web page.
From 1914 shows a dense group of armed rurales in Huerta's army. Many wear sombrero.
Now we have as HTML a fully accessible slide deck. So I can export the whole slide deck as a PDF. Once I have that slide deck as a PDF, so in ChatGPT then I give it that slide deck, the PDF of the slides. Now remember, I also broke that up because that was a really long lecture. So I broke it into 3 parts. This is just part 1. Then I tell it what I want it to do. It creates a downloadable file, and then I upload that in Netlify over here, and I put a link in Canvas. So rather than going through all of those slides individually and creating all of that alt text and making accessible slides, I'm having it convert that entire slide deck into an accessible web page.
Not far-fetched for a lot of things that what we do with advising. This is an assessment. So whether it's a PDF or a Word document, Ashley's going to show you what we ended up doing.
But also, let's just say, from the perspective of making this an accessible document, this is a nightmare.
Table ultimately should be for data, not for formatting. And this is a table for formatting.
We did the same process. We plugged this in. We asked for HTML. What we got was this. So you can plug in your name, you can mark, right? And down here for each of the levels, it's created drop-down menus, formatted it beautifully. The one question that remains is, well, where does the data go, right? When I plug in the information, where is it going to? As is right now, it's not going anywhere. So you're plugging it in, but it's not saving. You could, if we wanted to further develop the code on this, we could ask it to, there's a way to link it up to a Google form. You could also provide like a print button at the bottom, open up a print dialog and save as PDF, saves it. And so you could then print this as a PDF. So that is now fully accessible as well. Thanks for showing up, everyone. I hope that was at least somewhat helpful.
Thank you, everybody.